Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for a dynamic effort, a lower day, but a quick reminder for those of you who watch these videos. Please remember to click like down below, be greatly appreciated. All right, today's workout was a little shorter than usual. I noticed my knees just really weren't feeling great. It's pretty cold outside. I went ahead and closed the garage door so I didn't have to put on sweats and everything, but a little bit cold compared to normal where I live. And you know what? My knees just weren't feeling great. I've also been doing all that deeper squatting this last week or so. And so again, I felt like today, just my quads and everything, and particularly patellar tendons, really only needed to do speed squats and deadlifts, keeping in mind that I'm doing 5x5 on both of these now. So my workloads are technically higher in terms of the volume on these than they have been. Also, I decided let's go ahead and go back to the box squats. Let's take just one day where we rotate over to the safety squat bar. I'll probably rotate these around. When I'm closer to meets, I'll probably want to do mostly straight bar. In fact, I've done straight bar for a little while, and I do have just another little practice meet coming up. But again, I decided today, let's just use the safety bar. Let's break up the monotony a little bit. This is something I haven't done in a while, this safety bar with chains to a box, right? So again, different training stimulus. Let's go ahead and stimulate some different adaptation. But I felt like the effective workload was so high between the squats and the deadlifts today that I just didn't need a lot of volume to get a workout that's going to stimulate some adaptation. Also keeping in mind I'm in a small calorie deficit. I'm obviously getting leaner. I think people are noticing that. Looking at my arms and legs and stuff, we're losing body fat. And I'm going to continue to do that for a while. I don't want to have to do water cuts really at all this year if I can avoid it more than just skipping breakfast, for weigh-in days, so that we continue to just drop the weight through the morning up until the weigh-in. So it's pretty much going to be my strategy. So I'm going to get leaner and leaner. And it means accordingly, we may not see a lot of strength gains for a little while. They're going to be stagnant. And I can accept that. I can accept that because in the long term, if I get leaner, I'm going to be more competitive. My channel will probably grow. Just people are so obsessed with leanness. It's not like I don't know how to get lean. I just don't like the strength side of it. So again, these were different. I only had one rep where I ran into an issue with the chains today. So again, I decided we needed to get some novel training response here, something a little different. So I went with chains. We went with chains on this one. And now that I'm up to 5x5, because I've done 5x5 with bands once or twice now, I wanted to try the chains. Again, rotating the stimulus a lot on the primary exercises. This is something that if I want to do conjugate, if I want to just run a lot of the same assistance movements, right? All of our accessory work, all of our stuff like that, really just supplemental lifts. If I want to keep a lot of those the same, we can prevent overuse on those because they're largely done as pump work. We can prevent a lot of overuse if I simply rotate stimulus on the main exercises quite a bit. So we're going to see me doing a lot more of that so that I can really focus on the hypertrophy work, doing the stuff that I know is most effective for very long periods of time. So again, rotating these things around. And I think definitely the chains today, because I got used to pulling against bands. I haven't done any pulls against chains in a while. Again, it just felt dramatically different, and especially doing it for fives, right? Especially doing it for fives. Totally different beast. Although I will say it's not really as taxing as bands. Bands are a lot harder, particularly at the grip. So that's the other thing I noticed too. I'm not quite getting as great of grip training at the top with the holds against the chains as I do the bands, even though it's technically in the same amount of tension, within a few percentages. Right, because we're not going to have these things perfect because of the way band tensions are, and then with chains, how much of it last inch might be touching the ground. But they're within 1% to 2%. They're close. They're close. So didn't quite see that same response as far as it trying to jerk the bar out of my hands. But I still like to hold them just briefly at the top, where we have the most weight, helps with grip overall. And I didn't do back work today because, again, everything felt good on this. I felt like I got plenty of back stimulus doing that. But to change things up, because I really just wanted to do my posterior chain stuff, glute ham raises, reverse hypers, these need to be done no matter what. These kind of fall into that category of if I don't do anything else, these need to be done. Of course, I did do one set of hanging leg raises because I've said in some of the client vlogs, I need to start working these back in. And to work them back in. All right, but the glute ham raises, I went ahead and ran this one mini band. I ran a Rogue Red, just one band. We just really couldn't finish the third set. I got to about 7 reps or so, and my body was like, okay, we're done. And my hamstrings were feeling really beat up. I think it's mainly because of doing the boxes, hit the posterior chain a little harder sometimes than a back squat, and then doing the 5x5 on the speed pulls. My whole posterior chain was already kind of lit up going into this, and this just hammered it. That was something that's a little different. I normally only feel the hamstrings on this particular movement, but I felt glutes and stuff a lot more. Just adding that little bit of band tension completely changes the dynamic. And this is something, I've had people say, well, GHRs, if we need to rotate movements a little, what do we do? Like, well, you can add straight weight with plates, you can add bands, you can add chains. All right, these are great ways to change this exercise up. Even if you're at relatively similar settings on it, you have settings you're comfortable with. This helps tremendously. As far as just, again, getting a different movement pattern in there, breaking things up a little bit, avoiding overuse, and particularly bands. Bands change the strength curves on movements more than anything else. Chains change it. Chains absolutely change it, but bands are a little more aggressive in how much they change it. But, always remind people it's easier to overtrain with bands. And I don't mean light mini band stuff like what you see me do with triceps. I mean, when you start adding bands to big movements, it is easier to overtrain on them. And it can become a concern as far as that goes. And it's just because of the nature of the bands and the way that they fight against you. And also the mechanical damage, the structural damage it causes to muscle tissue. And it's those overspeed eccentrics. They can cause more muscle damage, more micro tearing. So you do have to be very, very careful of that. All right, glute ham raises, I decided I wanted to try to go as strict as possible. I wanted to eliminate the swinging. I'm like, let me go down to a lighter weight. I went down to what's light for me because I normally work with, 500 plus pounds. I just put 4 plates aside on. It's only 360. I'm like, let me just try to do these as strict as possible and really try to squeeze my glutes as hard as I can at the top. And you can't stop the weight. People need to understand that. And honestly, I felt like I was getting my legs higher than this on it. I was surprised it's only this high looking at it because I felt like I had a lot of range of motion. But it's, again, just trying to get more control. And it hammered my posterior chain hard. It hit my glutes and everything, my low back just as hard as normal. If anything, I felt more glute than normal on it. So again, this is a good thing. All right, it's a good thing. We're working the posterior chain hard. And, as I've already said before, my grip and back and everything are getting trained still. If I don't want to do the rows on this day, it's not a big deal. The only thing we might be missing is a little posterior delt and stuff. But I'm not even worried about biceps because I actually do biceps after rows on upper body days now. So, the only concern might be rear delts. And I can always go through later and do a few band pull-aparts or something. Or add those on weeks like this if I don't always do rows on the lower days. Which, again, it's not necessary for me to do so. My back is very, very well developed. And I found it doesn't take a lot of volume for me to maintain it or even make further progress. Because I've done it always with this. But yeah, I actually felt these very, very effectively, even though I'm using the lighter weight, and I can't say that I'm losing any stimulus. It felt just as effective as what I do with a little more swinging with the heavier weight. So I'm happy with it. I think I just want to work with this for a little while. But I did my 5x10, and then of course I finished up with a set of hanging leg raises. I don't want to overdo it easing back into them, but I do need to do more of them. I think it would be a good idea. I could use the extra ab work, I could use the extra hip flexor work. Because a lot of times my ability to keep my chest and stuff up does limit my squatting on maxes. So, again, stronger core, not a bad idea. And of course, it all needs to be dynamic. I don't want to get into my issue with planks and everything else, but the research is starting to show that, and I've always said, well, we don't need more isometrics for our core. We get plenty of it on squats, deadlifts, all that stuff. We need something dynamic. And I like hanging leg raises, and I like standing exercises, if we're going to do anything at all. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.